Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Darsh Shah.
And I'm Dr. Altamash Raja.
And welcome to Medicine Redefined,
a podcast where we will explore the often overlooked but necessary components of health, what we consider to be the fundamentals.
We will investigate topics and practices that can give you and your patients the best chance to optimize a healthy lifestyle. It's time to move the needle forward and put the health back in healthcare.
Before I introduce this week's guest, a quick story time brought to you by locumstory.com. Today, we'll be reading One Job, Two Job. One job, two jobs, red blob, no job. Elective doc, emergency doc, some in overstock, some in out of stock. This doc is too abused, this doc is underused. This doc can't get sick, say, let's try a brand new trick. For all the docs about to cry, here's an idea you can try. Look into locum tenens assignment, a really great option, you might find it. Don't forget locums pays much better, and you can find assignments in any type of weather. With all this new info trapped up in your thinker, go to financialresidency.com/locumstory and use your mouse to tinker. It's here you'll find the unbiased answers you're after, so you can decide if locum tenens is your next chapter.
Just a quick FYI before we get started, this conversation is going to be one between myself and Dr. Neil Paulvin, as Altamash will rejoin us at the next episode. But to introduce our guest, Dr. Neil Paulvin is a board-certified physician in family medicine, anti-aging and regenerative medicine, OMM, and medical acupuncture. He has helped top executives, Olympic athletes, top trainers, and celebrities optimize their health. He has been featured in New York Post, Nutritious Life, Fasting MD, and other publications and podcasts. He is based in Manhattan, but he also serves clients in multiple states, including Florida, California, Illinois, New Jersey, and Connecticut over telemedicine. Dr. Paulvin uses traditional and alternative treatments to help his patients. Patients see Dr. Paulvin for his expertise in biohacking and health optimization. In addition, he specializes in helping his patients with hormone optimization, peptide therapy, nootropics, and natural options for pain relief, which some of those options we are going to delve into in today's episode. Now, today we are going to do a general overview of mitochondrial health and why it is so important to target when we are talking about longevity and anti-aging. Now, there's many different ways to optimize your mitochondrial health, but we're going to talk about 3 supplements that potentially could help. And the first one's NAD, the second one is peptide therapy, and the third one is Spermidine. So sit back, enjoy, and let's live longer. Dr. Paulvin, what's up? How are you, man?
I'm doing good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're based in New York, yeah?
Manhattan, yep.
Manhattan. And how long have you been there for now?
I've been here solely for about three and a half years.
Okay. All right. So just before the pandemic then, and then
you summed it up right there. Yeah, right when things got going.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, I guess things are opening back up, so you've been able to enjoy it, hopefully, most of Manhattan for what it is.
Yeah, things luckily, knock on wood, are getting back to somewhat normalcy.
Awesome. Cool. Well, all right. So for our listeners that, don't know what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about mitochondrial health. And I know something that you've really been giving talks on are things like peptides, NAD, Spermidine. And interestingly, we actually met through Clubhouse. And I think, early on when Clubhouse started, we were in a couple of those rooms together talking about, things in the future, especially with some of those guests. So let's start back from how you started. How did you enter into the field of medicine?
I entered kind of the same answer that in terms of what got me into more of the alternative stuff is I had headaches even before med school. I saw every specialist known to mankind, except I think for a gynecologist, and they all put me on these medicines that were sedating or had like side effects, and they really didn't help much. And then what I found that kind of helped me was doing things, again, it was a combination of doing things like breath work and mobility and yoga and some occasional supplements. So that kind of opened my light to I want to help people who kind of or have suffering and maybe that they're not getting listened to. Because a lot of times, it's nothing is in your head, that kind of, not the blame game, but just kind of, if we don't know exactly what it is, they just blow you off and say it's in your head type mortality. And then also add in traditional medicine is great for certain things, but also add in the alternative things that have some data behind it. That's kind of where I kind of fit in. Especially now, it's more and more. I get more questions about: is this real? Is this not? Is it? Mm-hmm. And then if it is, what do I do about it? So that's kind of where it just kind of snowballed from there.
Absolutely. So did you know while you were in med school that you wanted to go down like the functional medicine alternative route, or was that something after you thought about after family med?
No, it was family med. I was either going to do sports med or just straight family. I needed variety, so I just decided not to do sports med solely.
Hmm.
And then I was, again, like I said, I was having patients, especially I was kind of in a rural area when I started out of residency, and there weren't a lot of specialists around. And I trained like in a city environment where you're kind of always like trying to use the newest, coolest thing. And again, I had patients who were just not getting satisfied with the answers they were getting from their docs. So I kind of adding things in here and there, and it just kind of, again, the group. I'm like, wait, this works. Let me do some research on it. And I'd go to a conference and, oh, maybe this will work. And then it kind of just, you go down the rabbit hole, and I think you never come
Hmm.
back to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's what's fascinating about the whole lifestyle functional medicine game, though. I mean, it's just you start to connect the dots, and biochemistry is actually fun, right? And it actually starts to make sense. And all those things you learn in med school that you're like, oh, I'm never going to use this. You maybe start to see some of that come back again. And again, you start to connect all the systems. So that's exactly why I'm interested in it as well. So, Dr. Paulvin, I know you're a jack of all trades, and honestly, we could probably talk for 10 hours here about everything that you're doing, but I want to focus on mitochondrial health because I know this is something that you've been talking about lately. And honestly, looking at David Sinclair and Rhonda Patrick, Peter Attia, this topic has been getting hot. And I think there's a lot of data out there now coming out showing that there's different things. So I just want to ask you, why does the mitochondria matter when we talk about anti-aging and longevity?
How do I answer that succinctly? There's a lot to it. I mean, it matters because the simple answer, it used to be just called like the motor of the cell, the motor of the body. Now we know it does so many other things, that we know that it helps your body produce the proteins and helps recycle the DNA that's been damaged. We know that it produces sirtuin, which sirtuin with the anti-aging molecule, which also have other functions. Now we're learning that's a whole thing from David Sinclair in his book. We know that it helps with that the benefit of getting rid of recharging our batteries and recycling things. Like people now, 2 years ago, nobody knew the word autophagy. Now it's almost become a cool buzzword. People are fasting. People, again, you mentioned spermidine. I mean, things that people, again, never even thought about 2 years ago that only maybe one or a couple of doctors were talking about. Now it's kind of become the understanding. So, all that revolves around the mitochondria. And again, the mitochondria kind of is the core of the whole foundation of a lot of different things. It's everywhere. It's predominant in the brain. It's predominant in the heart, muscle cells. So it's everywhere. So, and it's kind of like my cheesy now never pays. If you don't fix the foundation of the house, you may have a cool bedroom and a nice view, but if the foundation stinks, then you're kind of stuck. That's why everything's kind of reverted back. And honestly, between peptides, and we mentioned spermidine, and people now doing like fasting and cold immersion, we now have things to treat the problems with that. And the other part of it is we are now, somehow it all kind of snowed in the last year, in terms of we're finding the link both for longevity and unfortunately the link to the mitochondria and illnesses like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes, obesity. And they're like, why? Like, again, unfortunately, the medicine came out for Alzheimer's last year. Like, why is it not working? It's like, maybe it's not working on the right thing. So a long answer, but yeah, that's kind of, it's the core of a lot of things.
No, that makes sense, right? I think we learned in grade school, it's the powerhouse, right? That's the buzzword we use, powerhouse of the cell. So absolutely. So let's get into kind of the first topic here, which I think we should start with NAD, because I think that's what I think most people may have heard of when we think of mitochondrial health. Can you explain what NAD is? How does it help the mitochondria?
Yeah, NAD, it does a couple different things in the mitochondria. It powers a transport chain in the cell that produces ATP, produces energy. For those old school people, it's like producing the power pellets and Pac-Man that you need. It's getting those things going for you. It also helps produce some certain other chemicals that we know you need, things like, and people may now have heard things like alpha-ketoglutarate and oxaloacetate, which now have their own benefits, but it produces a lot of hormones that or not hormones, probably it's more enzymes, probably a better word for them, or cofactors. And then also now we know it activates, like I mentioned, it activates sirtuins, which are anti-aging, also help the mitochondria divide, which you know is important. It works on what's called your clock gene, which now has become even more, people are talking about your circadian rhythm. If you have no NAD, your circadian rhythm may be off. It helps your body repair on damaged DNA, which occurs in the cell. So it does a lot. I mean, I'm sure there's other stuff that it does. I mean, it helps regulate inflammation in the cell, helps block oxidative stress, which is damage from toxins and inflammation and things like that. So it does a lot. And they're finding more and more things that it does and why it's important.
Now, do we supplement NAD because people have low levels of it, or is it something that we're just kind of topping off?
Either or. It depends on the person where you're talking about. We're starting to finally, there are some beginning tests now that you can actually get a level, because before that you really had no idea where anybody was. We know at the age of 30, that's when people start having their levels decrease. So that's kind of the assumption. And it's kind of like anything else. You could have, if you have 5/6 of a gas tank, you're just you're only going to do so much. Otherwise, you're not doing much. The same idea with the NAD.
Right.
If you're 22 years old, it only may do so much. Again, it may give you a quick brain boost or something, but it activates your tunes, but you already have it. In my older patients, anybody over 30 or 40, it's probably doing a lot more, giving you a little more benefit. But like I said, once we get these, the next year or two, they're doing some, trying to figure out exactly what is, like, we know what your sugar level should be, we know what your blood pressure should be. We don't know what the right level of NAD is to be optimal yet. So that's going to be, one of the new things in the next probably 5 years, I'd say. Hopefully less than that.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I mean, as we get more into precision testing and things, I mean, I'm sure that's going to be one of them. It's interesting. I think a lot of these supplements and ideas of the biohacking that we're looking at for longevity, from the research I've been looking at, it seems like we're seeing more anecdotal evidence, at least for, like you said, the patients that are 30, 40, and even more if they're 50 or older. Is that the population that you're generally targeting?
Not anymore, to be honest. I mean, what I do is, there's been some evidence with, again, we'll probably get this a little bit later. NMN has a lot of cool studies, which is one of the versions of supplements that are out there now. Has so much good data in terms of muscle, has some preliminary studies in terms of muscle building, sugar metabolism, things like that. So that's where I use it in somebody under the age of 30. So I use that specific metabolite. Am I giving them NAD IVs every week? No. Am I giving them a nice dose of NMN? Yes. So kind of a little bit of a division there.
What does NMN stand for? Is that like a type of peptide, or is that
nicotine mono something? Now you're testing me after.
Okay.
That's the nicotinic mononucleotide, maybe, off the top of my head.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And that's supposed to support, I guess, the NAD and the mitochondria in that role.
Yeah, it needs carried into the cell, and then the cell can use it for energy and all the other things that we talked about before.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, let's shift gears towards peptides now, because at least when I'm doing a Google search on peptide therapy, I mean, wow, it's insane how much is coming up, from cancer therapy to IBD to muscle building to you name it. So what is peptide therapy? Why do people need it? Or who needs it?
Peptide therapy it's exploding. I mean, that's probably the most common thing I get asked. I mean, Laura, I think every day on social media, I get like 10 questions a day from everywhere across the world at this point. Peptides are small amino acids that have very specific roles. They work on an enzyme system, or they work on a hormone receptor, or they're going to work on, do a specific job, one or the other. And they, like you said, they can, right now, there's most things they can help with. Again, what I tell my patients is that certain things that are kind of going to be the primary treatment method, or at least or lifestyle therapy. In some cases, they're a nice add-on, but you need to find other treatments that go along with it. What's great now is they used to be all injection based. Now there's nose sprays and creams, and now there's patches. And so a lot of my patients initially used to be needle phobic. They're like, well, I can't take it. And now they're like, okay, I'll do the oral, I'll do the nose spray. So that's what's become very advantageous. A lot of good studies are coming out. Like, again, now it's kind of, people always were kind of quizzical. Well, there's not great studies on some of these compared to others. I mean, the one that everybody knows is BBC 157. That has some really good studies, from gut health to liver issues to tendon regeneration, things like that. But some of the other ones had like very limited data. So that's finally coming down the pike a little bit. And so that's how it works. And again, it's something that, the one other thing I'll say about peptides that people understand is that they're not usually meant to be long-term monotherapy, or they're meant to be usually a shorter duration. They should be stacked, which means you get more benefit doing them in combo with something else, and the total is better than the sum of the parts in terms of a lot of cases. And the other thing is you want to do quote unquote cycling them, where you do them for 2 or 3 months, maybe 4 to 6 months, depending on which one you're talking about. And then if you still have issues, you can switch to something else. But you don't want to be doing the same thing for 2 years. It's not, that doesn't work.
Do you know why it doesn't work? I mean, at least from a side effect profile, I was hearing some other podcasts too saying, there's minimal to almost none side effects when using peptides. I don't know if you've seen something different.
That's where the problem is, in the sense of there's great studies in showing why they work, but there's nobody paying right now to do long-term studies in terms of side effects. We're going based on mechanism. A lot of these products do what's called angiogenesis, which is increased blood vessel growth. And there's a very, 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 very slight chance that can lead to cancer and other issues. So that's something we don't know, and we not know for years. So that's one, the immune peptides. You don't want to be stimulating your immune system without knowing what that also could lead to side effects. And then the ones that boost growth hormone, again, if you're boosting growth hormone in perpetuity, then you're going to shut down your body's natural performance, which is you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. So that's it's more medical assumption, kind of not, I don't say anecdotal, probably not that word, but we're assuming things based on what we know from other things out there. So again, I've had pharmacies who are kind of little, not the mainstream ones, kind of say, just take it forever. But from the medical side, we know that a lot of these should not be. Again, you don't do you don't do testosterone. In theory, you do things to protect yourself from testosterone. If you're doing it long term, you do things to protect the system. Why would you do with some that are as strong as these? So it's right now a little supposition, but just be careful.
That makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. Yeah. How many peptides are there? How many are you dealing with?
I mean, the ones that are mainstream now, there's probably 40 to 50.
Okay.
That are mainstream. There's some that you can get that are quote unquote for lab studies only, in air quotes if people can't see me, that have a lot of potential but aren't really ready for prime time yet. I mean, the main issue that we'd find is when a new one comes out, it's hard to figure out dosing. Dosing gets a little tough because you just don't know where that sweet spot is. I mean, we know what it is for BBC 157, but there's some other ones out there we just have no idea.
Now, does each peptide have a specific receptor that you're targeting, or does it kind of just, how does it exactly work in the body in terms of mechanism?
They all work differently. Some we have no idea. Some we have a really good idea. Again, we know the growth hormone ones are either working on ghrelin or artificially working on the growth hormone receptor. That's easy A to B. We know how some of the thymosin peptides work. They're working on either the thymus, the pineal gland, the pituitary, things like that. BBC, we really don't know as much. We know what it does. We know, but it's not specifically. We know it's derived from human stomach acid or bovine, but we don't know exactly how it works. So it depends. They all work differently. MOTS-c, which has gotten really popular for workout and weight loss, that works on the AMPK, which is again a mitochondrial pathway, which is energy and weight loss. So they all have different. Some have really defined pathways, but some don't.
Gotcha. Okay. And then in terms of forms, I know you touched on a bunch. Which ones do your patients typically get? You said injection, oral, intranasal.
The way I summarize for patients is, in most cases, I prefer doing oral. I mean, not oral. I prefer doing either IV or injection initially for the first month, because I assume most of my patients have some type of gut issue. So if they're not cheap. That's something. I mean, they're not like $5. So if you're going to spend that much money on something, you want to make sure it works and get the benefit of it. And then I'll switch them to oral. If it's a localized pain issue, then we can use a cream or a pill a little bit more. If it's a brain issue, they're looking for either deal with the brain pathology or just want to be a quote unquote biohacker, have an optimized brain, then that's where the nose sprays will come in. There's also one called Dihexa, which is really great, which is a cream on the back of the neck that works really well. So it depends what you're using it for. If you're using more systemically, then I like either the injection in the belly, what we call subcutaneously, or some can be done IV.
Yeah, I was reading that, a lot of these peptides, especially BPC, have pretty long half-lives, especially since it's from, in the stomach acid isn't going to break it down. And then especially if you do IV, it'll stay in the plasma for a pretty long time, which is the benefit of that. Super cool stuff. So who should get peptide therapy?
That's a weighted question. I'm just trying to think how to answer it. I mean, again, I think most in a vacuum, who is easily available to everybody, who's an adult, there's something that they could use it for. I mean, either patients will have joint pain, muscle pain. I mean, I've seen the amazing things I've seen even in the last month from my patients, from patients who've seen, I mean, you're a resident, you probably still see it, the patients with the charts that are like 3 inches thick, and they've seen every doctor and nothing's helped them. I mean, I had a patient here 2 days ago who's had this horrible pain, and then he's been on the medicines, the peptides, for like 6 weeks. And he's like, it's the first time I've been able to ride my bike in 25 months or something, like over 2 years. And like literally like in 6 weeks. And he's like, I'm a new man. And it's like, so almost everybody could find a use for him in a vacuum. I mean, again,
Sure.
the anti-aging possibilities, the ability to help recover your mitochondria. It should be given to a 10-year-old, not really. I mean, but again, I think every adult should at least do the anti-inflammatory one once to kind of recycle. Beyond that, again, it depends what your goals are, I mean, there's patients who just don't want to take anything, but if you're into healthy lifestyle, those are the ones that either BPC is a good place to start, because there's so many things.
Absolutely. Now, are you only seeing functional medicine providers or lifestyle medicine providers work with peptide therapy, or is this starting to, spread across now to more practices?
It's starting to spread. It's definitely become more mainstreamish. The dermatologists are using it now because some cosmetic applications, plastic surgeons. A lot of the ortho and sports medicine PM&R people are using it now, because I use it like as joint injections instead of doing like a cortisone shot. And or I know somebody's trying to do a study between this stuff and like PRP, which is I'm really curious to see what happens there. So some guys on PRP are all over the place too. I mean, you probably know that better than me. So I mean, that's where it's becoming. Is a family medicine doctor using it yet? Probably not. But where in those type of use case scenarios it's become popular, are they advanced in how they're doing it? No. They know, okay, take this BPC or take this TB4 and I think you'll feel better in 2 months. Yes, that's what they're doing.
Sure.
Kind of
and I'm assuming
basic level.
Yeah, I'm assuming insurance doesn't cover these things either. It's probably out of pocket.
Not at all. No.
Yeah. Right. All right, cool. Let's move on to Spermidine then. Interesting compound that I was reading up on, but the name I think gets a little bit, gets weird for people. So why is it called Spermidine?
It is actually, there is a relationship to sperm. I don't know where the name come from specifically. It's derived from arginine, a couple other substances, and it just got that name. And but there is a relationship to sperm, but there's no sperm in it. Obviously, it just I don't know. They just gave it a bad name. It got
right.
It was last in line for a good chemical name.
Absolutely. So why use it? What's the benefit of Spermidine? What is it? Is it a peptide? Is it just another supplement or molecule?
It's called a polyamine, which is not an amino acid, but it has the same amine group for the scientists out there. It does so many different things. It's derived initially from either natto or wheat germ. You can get some if you eat wheat germ or lentils or mushrooms. If you're a mushroom eater, mushrooms have so many benefits, including that. And then it works on so many different ways. It works increasing nitric oxide, which we're learning the benefits of. Now we know that it helps decrease a lot of the inflammatory chemicals, things called like NF-kappa B, and some of the inflammatory tests that we do for patients with chronic inflammatory disease. We know that it can heal the gut lining. A study came out on that last year. What else to do? It may actually regulate the microbiome, which everybody's aware of now. We know across the blood-brain barrier, so we're now using it for potentially some studies with Alzheimer's and other brain pathology. It also has, for people who are in the anti-aging space, there's a kind of a checklist of what they call the anti-aging, the 9 pillars of anti-aging. It actually does the most anti-aging things of any compound out there. It actually just kind of past rapamycin. It does 7 of the 9. It does stem cells. It works on telomeres. It works on the mitochondria. It does all those different things in one little compound with very minimal side effect profile to it. So they're now using it cosmetically. People are using it in their skincare regimen with NAD. We did NAD skin cream. So it just has so many different possibilities to it. What else that's a starting point. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of a very multifunctional.
Absolutely.
And it's gained, it's probably since CBD became insanely popular, like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
The most quickly popular thing, like again, lay people were asking me about it, not me just bringing it up.
Yeah, Spermidine. Yeah, absolutely. So many benefits. Again, if anyone wants to take a quick Google search, even if you go to spermidinelife.com, I think that's like one of the probably main organizations or companies out there that are doing research. And, I think Austria is where most of the hub of this research is. And I was reading their website, like 13,343 studies or something on Spermidine, which is an insane amount. And, Dave Sinclair's on the board for that as well. So, and some other heavy hitters. So absolutely insane. So now one of the things obviously is autophagy, right? And for the listeners out there,
I missed the most important one, that it actually got started at it. It uses autophagy, but just by either taking or having enough of it through your diet, which is, we know the importance of autophagy in terms of aging, not blocking, limiting the production of senescent cells, decreasing inflammation, all these different benefits of autophagy. Again, we know there's a relationship with autophagy and neurodegenerative issues and inflammation. So that's kind of where it got its cool start from. They don't know the exact mechanism yet of why it does it, but that's what's out there right now. And also, the one thing that's really growing is they're now starting to look at it in terms of infertility, because again, they know that some of the issues with infertility with the ovary and the eggs may be that they're not inducing autophagy and not recycling and so on. So that's some cool little stuff that's come out there in the last couple of weeks.
Talking about infertility, I was listening to this podcast episode, very interesting, because they were talking about longevity back in China, like ancient China. And they had, I guess, these scrolls or written documents about how they would talk about men to gain arousal, but to not ejaculate. And because of that, you would actually increase, and they would think, the spermidine in your body and actually gain energy, and just gain a multitude of benefits from it, right? And the podcast I was listening to was about spermidine. So again, just a lot of interesting correlates, I think, that we're seeing from the past to now, but who knows? But for the listeners out there wondering, autophagy, auto meaning self, phagy meaning breaking down, right? It's that cell turnover. Can be done with fasting, right? This is kind of how fasting started, intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. After 48 hours, you're trying to induce that autophagy, kill off the senescent cells, and essentially have your weak cells die off, your stronger cells get stronger. So in terms of spermidine and fasting, are you supposed to take it fasting, or can you do it while eating? How does that work?
You can, in theory, you should not take it during a fast. So either take it before you start fasting, because technically, in theory, you could have, especially for the really hardcore fasting, I don't know what to call them, it may induce an insulin spike because of where it's made from, because it does have that. So I don't have patients do it that way. Could you do it? Yeah. In the black, if you want a black and white answer, I'd say no.
Right. So, if you're doing it with eating, I'm assuming the mechanism or the pathways are going to override at least the fed state, right? Where you have that insulin spike and then you're not inducing autophagy.
It's been fine. They tell you take it you can do it. I have patients either take it in the, let me take a step back. So we normally have patients do either take it in the morning before they've eaten. So in theory, you haven't eaten yet, or we have them take it at bedtime. So you are avoiding that, but we're just not, the fasting question is not really, you may break your fast. So okay. We don't have patients taking in the middle of the day right after a meal usually. It's either morning or bedtime. I've now switched, and I've talked to some of the head guys. I've talked to the guys from the two major companies. I'm not sure if we're name dropping or not.
Sure. What do you want?
There's Spermidine Life and there's Spermidine. Those are the two major guys out there. One from here, one from Europe. Both great companies. And we're kind of leaning towards the morning, unless it does work on circadian rhythm. They don't. So that's the patients you have take it at night. Otherwise, I switch almost all my patients to take it right in the morning.
Awesome. Okay. And I know this question about data constantly comes up, right? I want to remind people that, although I don't think there's a ton of human studies right now, there's some in the works currently as I was looking up, and the data is still, going through, the data is getting read. But a lot of the compounds we look at, right? You look at turmeric, you look at all these things, it first kind of starts with anecdotal evidence, right? From all the podcasts I've heard, when you're over 50 years old is kind of when you start to notice the benefits of spermidine. And the other thing I should mention, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but you're supposed to take it for at least 2 to 3 months before seeing any of the benefits. Is that correct?
No, I mean, I've had patients do it for 2 weeks and see benefits. It's like anything else. It also depends how deficient you are and so on and
Sure.
so forth, and what the problem is. I mean, I know people who use it. It also depends on dosing, to be honest.
Hmm.
The dose, and even the companies will admit it, and they're working on it now, that the dosing that's on the bottle now is very, very, very low compared to what the animal studies are and where they're heading in probably the next year to 18 months. The dosing will be much higher. So that's part of the issue too. It just takes so long to build up with the dosing recommended on the bottle. But right
Okay.
now, go with the dosing recommended by the bottle or by your healthcare provider. That's the little caveat there.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Going back to kind of what I was saying, people who question these things, it's important to understand that a lot of research comes after we see some anecdotal evidence, right? When a lot of people take something and they see something work, that's where, questions get raised and say, how is this working? What's going on? Let's actually do some studies and either prove this to be right or wrong. And again, 13,000 studies off that website. It's pretty impressive. And so I'm excited to see kind of what the future holds in terms of the data and really showing the effects of spermidine, the mechanism of action, all those things. So going back to mitochondrial health, so we talked about NAD, we talked about peptides, and we talked about spermidine. What's your mental model for when a patient comes in? How do you choose exactly what to start them with?
Honestly, depends what's going on. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, it's almost like an algorithm in my head at this point. So if we're talking, I mean, pretty much you can even break it down to if there's an illness versus a longevity type mechanism there. I mean, if you're talking about, I mean, the simple part, if you're somebody who's just trying to be longevity and be healthy and more a lifestyle vein, that's where you're going more for spermidine. That's where you're using what are called mitochondrial peptides that Matsi I mentioned before. There's a new one that has some really good potential, which is kind of like the way I describe it is like a 17-year-old driving a Ferrari at this point. We're not sure exactly where it's going to go, but it usually turns out well. So that's S31. So that's where I'm going with that. And then for everybody, I mean, I think everybody now should be doing red light therapy or photobiomodulation. The data is just incredible. Like another thing, has a new study every day that is incredible. So that's kind of where I'm leaning for that. And then the other case, like you said, if somebody who's ill or chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, that's where we're kind of, like I said before, you're kind of trying to build the foundation again. You're giving them the things they need. You're giving them NAD or NMN. You're giving them ALA, which is alpha lipoic acid. You're giving them the 4 or 5 core things: alpha lipoic acid, carnitine, resveratrol, ribose in some cases. Sometimes obviously CoQ10, PQQ. Some of those supplements are people now have become more mainstream as well. You need to build the foundation up first, and then you can add in the cool new toys. The peptides and other stuff. So it really depends on where they're coming from.
Gotcha. Now, are most of your patients that come see you, are they on like statins? Are they on other medications that may, damage the mitochondria that you're worried about?
I have a very healthy population just because of where my practice is skewed a little bit.
Right.
2 years ago, the answer would be yes. Now it's not as much. But I do. A lot of them are on medications that may do that. If they are on them, then it's kind of it's a scale type of thing. I mean, somebody who somebody who comes in their cholesterol 700, you kind of got to, again, like I tell patients, you have to do certain things. Again, this may sound cocky or conceited. There's so many new things out there in the last 2 or 3 years. You can fix the side effects. You got to still fix the big stuff. So if I need to give you some CoQ10 or give you a shot of CoQ10, I can do that. You need to protect your heart and your brain. So that works. So I love the natural stuff, but sometimes you still got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, 100% with you on that. I mean, every episode on the show, I think we're always talking about the foundations, right? I mean, if you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, you're not getting your movement in, you can't, control your stress, then these products, these supplements we're talking about aren't really going to touch you as much, right? Like we have to, as Kelly Starrett, one of our guests who just came on last week, he talks about getting to base camp, right? We all want to climb Mount Everest, but let's get to base camp first. Let's get a solid foundation, and then we can start to optimize these things, right? And I think that's the key word. Now, is it possible to get these through foods? Obviously, spermidine we talked about, but do we get a sufficient amount, or do you think like getting a pill form is the way to do it?
It really depends. I mean, technically you can get resveratrol through some other foods. Trying to think. I mean, NAD, no. I mean, again, it depends what we're talking about. NAD, not really.
Yeah.
CoQ10. And I mean, again, a lot of this, it's hard. I mean, basic nutrient diets you can, like selenium and zinc and those types of things you can definitely do. Just going through my head really quickly. Yeah, a lot of the mitochondria stuff is hard. I mean, the B vitamins obviously you can get, but a lot of the core ones not as easy.
Yeah.
Especially with what people are going through now, like you said, between stress and the lack of sleep and so on. A lot of times they just need it. I mean, especially here in Manhattan, where you have just between the lifestyle and the smog and whatever, it's just a little bit different than if you're living on a farm in Iowa. We have fresh air and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And again, these things aren't, $5. They're pretty expensive things. And, hopefully in the future, again, as it becomes more mainstream, we'll start to see those prices come down and more people using it. Hopefully one day even insurance might even cover these things, but you got to get that foundation down first and foremost. So I want to go back into the kind of longevity, anti-aging. You mentioned red light. So how do you recommend people do that? There's so many different things out there. There's for the head, there's for the face, there's full body panels. What have you kind of seen the results of your patients?
I mean, the simple answer is if you have one thing right now, we're finding it's the full body panels that have both the red and the infrared and the near infrared frequencies. That's what you want because some will do superficial, some do deep. So you want to get a combination of both. You want to also certain frequencies target the brain. I think it's around 8. I guess on IG Live I just did. You want to be 800, 850 to specifically target the brain, probably even somewhere lower. And there's a bunch of, it's like a race now. There's about 4 or 5 things coming out specifically targeting the brain that should be out by the first quarter next year, which will be really, really cool. A company called Violight's running a bunch of studies now in terms of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's with the red photobiomodulation or red light. So in a vacuum, the panel's the best. The face mask, I actually was talking to somebody who does a lot, that's one of their big niches, and their concern is how deep the red light's going into. It's great for superficial things, but it's not really curative it's not the same as for the full body benefits of red light therapy. And again, the wraps are good. I mean, there's a couple of wraps I recommend to patients if you have a local injury like a shoulder or a knee. They're much more convenient because, again, you get it right localized on that spot. The thing with the red light, no matter what, is you want to make sure of how strong it is. I mean, now every manufacturer is putting that on there. If they won't tell you how strong it is, don't buy it. They don't tell you how much EMF there is. There's some of the earlier ones that had some popularity, had a lot of EMF issues, so they're not as popular anymore. And also you want to look at the flicker rate as well. So those are 3 things you always want to look at. Ask the either look on the website or talk to the rep for the company. If they don't answer or they avoid the questions,
be careful.
There's so many good ones out there now, then just move on.
Gotcha. This is interesting. So, I mean, I think a lot of this is, touched on the mitochondria, but when we look at anti-aging, do you think the mitochondria is the number one priority that we should be targeting? Or are there other, cellular functions? Things that we should be saying? Okay.
Right now, mitochondria is number 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
And then you get into the things but it kind of overlaps. Again, like you mentioned, inflammation. The 3 other things that kind of overlap, they're inflammation, oxidative stress, and senescence, which is still, we're getting a hold on still in terms of a lot of different, in terms of that's in theory not ready for prime time yet. I think it'll be ready soon. A lot of things that are out there. That all overlaps with mitochondrial health. So it's kind of, again, everything revolves around the mitochondria because it's everywhere, and all those processes go on there. So you need, if you don't, besides the basic stuff like you mentioned, life, exercise, and sleep, and so on, that to me is the paradigm is kind of flipped. That it used to be if your memory is going, okay, we're going to focus on the brain and fixing the neurotransmitters in the brain. Now it's like, if we just fix the mitochondria here and fix your gut health here, that'll make everything else work better. We've gone much more big picture, which is where functional medicine started, as opposed to just trying to treat a problem, treat the cause. And finally, things are slowly, it's like moving the Titanic, but it's getting there.
That's healthcare for you, right? I mean, slow and steady, hopefully, but you got to have some leaders out there that are willing to break some barriers. And like you said, I mean, treating the gut, treating the mitochondria, the whole body's connected, right? I mean, we've known this, and we still know it as we go through medical school and stuff, but yet there seems to be this disconnect once you get to residency and onwards, and you kind of get stuck in your ways of how you were taught, right? And it's hard to kind of break that out. But now with different modules, functional medicine, lifestyle medicine boards, integrated medicine, there's so much out there now where we can kind of take control and learn it for ourselves. So Dr. Paulvin, in your own lifestyle, what are those non-negotiables? I'll put that in air quote because I know, we're not everyone can't do everything every single day, but what are those routine things that you're doing for at least longevity and anti-aging?
Let's see. I guess all the time. I do supplement a lot. I just actually had an IV right before we popped on here. I'm an NAD junkie, either NMN or NAD. I love my red light. I try to fast at least 2 or 3 times a week. Sleep, I'll admit it, I try. I don't get the hours I should be getting, and I'm trying to really, again, I think it's like moving the Titanic a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm at least trying to maintain my circadian rhythm, which we're now realizing is almost as important as how you sleep or when you sleep. So I'm at least trying to do that and get up and get morning sunlight and doing some of those things. So that's what I do. And then I'm really, now that things are opening up here, it was hard. I got sick of doing those Zoom workouts and everything else, admitted, like a lot of other people. Hopping that Peloton bike got old after a while, but making sure I'm really trying to get to the gym, do some type of exercise like 4 or 5 times a week. Because we just know the benefit of all the muscles and the mitochondria, the chemicals that the muscles produce, have just so many benefits, BDNF and all this other stuff. So
sure, absolutely, yeah. You're listing off molecules here, but again, it's not the things he's taking. You're not taking BDNF. These are all results of setting the foundation, the exercise, the sleep, the movement, all those types of things. So absolutely. So what's next for you? You're always on the cutting edge. I mean, you're practicing biohacking. What are some of the things you're excited about?
Let's see. Right now I think there's a couple really cool things coming down. I am definitely, in terms of peptides. Peptides are great. There's still some limits to them, and unfortunately, the FDA is coming down on them. They're trying to. There's some 5 I can think of have been banned in the last year or so, that you can't really get in the U.S. anymore. But offshoot of that is what are called bioregulators, which also work on specific organ systems. And I know I've just started dabbling with them. I have other colleagues who have really done a deep dive in the last year to 18 months. They came to us from Europe and Russia. And they just have, I've seen even additive benefits in terms of my joint patients, in terms of my neurodegenerative patients, in terms of, it's more problem-based things as opposed to just longevity, except for a molecule that we really talk about called epidolon, which is may lengthen telomeres. But that's, I think, you're going to hear more and more about those in the next year to 18 months. I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about, Spermidine is, again, I think that's going to be really cool. I like the fact that 2 other things are the testing that's coming out now. It's great to, again, all of us say it's test so you know, and a lot of these things we kind of guess at. So again, like I mentioned, the NAD test is coming out now. There's a senescent cell test that's coming out in the next couple months. There's a hormone called clotho, which you'll probably hear more and more about, which has anti-aging possibilities and also weight and other things that we know that patients, say just came out last week or 2, that those have less of increased risk of brain issues like dementia and weight gain. There may be things that can treat that. And then the other thing is, I said, I'm a tech junkie, and I think a lot of stuff that unfortunately that was kind of backlogged because of the pandemic now kind of all got released in the last couple months, and they're coming out early, like Q1 next year. Again, I treat brain and mitochondria have kind of become like 2 things. And then, like I said, the red light helmets that are going to be coming out, and all these new head gadgets that are designed to optimize brain health, and we can assess the brain and actually kind of know what's going on. I think that's going to be the next level. And also the last thing I'll say, and just got approved a couple of weeks ago by the FDA, which is amazing, is a VR. So you could take a VR set and back pain, which I actually saw the unit. Ironically, I was actually having my practice the 2 weeks before COVID. The rep came in and then disappeared because unfortunately they never got approved. But now they got this new VR set just by watching these. It's either calming scenes with some meditations involved, or these kind of enjoyable things that reset some of the brain and the neurochemicals, and the patient's back pain diminished like 50%. Wow. So when you can, especially pain, which I'm sure you know better than me, if I don't have to give somebody steroids or Percocet or whatever, and I can have them wear cool goggles, and especially now what's going on with like the old technology and the metaverse and all that stuff. So I think
I was just about to bring it up. Yeah.
VR and all that stuff, I think, is going to be the future, because it was coming before, and now I think people were ready. Oculus was out 5 years ago, and people weren't ready for it yet. Now that is going to be where the next step is.
Oh, 100%. It's literally crazy, insane times when we think about the integration of everything going digital, AI with physiology to even like, right, crypto and money, and everything is just going digital. And I think yesterday I saw some news about the robots that can regenerate, and now they're looking
Mhm.
into like they can self-reproduce, and they've never seen anything like it. And now they're thinking about the implications for that in terms of tissue regeneration and stuff. So absolutely wild.
Throw in 3D printing and you're good to go.
Right?
There you go.
Absolutely. Yeah, there you go. Right. So for the healthcare providers out there, Dr. Paulvin, I mean, you obviously have a wealth of information. What resources do you recommend healthcare providers go to if they want to become more knowledgeable in terms of longevity, anti-aging, and kind of just biohacking?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I mean, there's definitely, you want to get a lot of these are not, like I said, some of them are very basic. Some of them you definitely want to work with the provider or an organization that's really good at kind of organizing things. I mean, if traditional functional medicine, I mean, IFM is still probably, Institute of Functional Medicine is still the core.
Mhm.
Um, I know I went through the fellowship through a company, an organization called A4M, which has a fellowship, just a general anti-aging fellowship. I know Dr. Weil has a more holistic one.
Mhm.
They also now are several peptide fellowships out there. Also, I would recommend somebody I've taken a lot of his courses. If you want really high end, if you're ready for it, Dr. William Seeds, SEEDS. He puts on a clinic. I mean, he does a lot of the stuff that's not ready for prime time yet, but has really good ideas. And that you could, if you know, like you said, if you know your biochemistry, you can use in your practice every day. So that's kind of more of a higher, and those are the places to look. Spermidine, like I said, both the websites for Primidine and Spermidine Life have an insane amount of resources
Mhm.
that they'll reach out to you. I mean, the owners are like, I know the owner of Prime. Actually, I know the owner of Primidine. Last name is Ken. I can't think of her first name off the top of my head. I mean, she can, like, I've had her on IG Live. I've had her all over social media, and she can answer any question, and she'll answer anybody's. They'll give you any answers. That's where you
Wow.
go. Go to the companies. They're not trying to sell you anything. They want to get the information out there, which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily their business is going well. They just want to get the information out there and give you the right information, and they'll tell you what studies are going. They'll talk to you about dosing. So just go. And those are the
Love
only
that.
time I usually say reach out to the companies, and
Yeah.
if anybody's any questions, they go just shoot me a DM, and I could always point you in the right direction to any of that type of stuff. But it's great
Absolutely.
because it's growing and growing. It's just finding the person who's not trying to make money off you and is going to give you the information that you can actually use, and not
Exactly.
just trying to have you buy a $5,000 membership.
Exactly. Yep. It's a wary space, right? And it's good to hear at least you kind of promote them and say like, hey, trusted company. But I know you're putting a lot of content out on Instagram as well. So tell us where our listeners can find you if they want to follow your journey and kind of learn some more of these biohacking tips.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the best places to find me are, I mean, right now it's Instagram. I'm restarting, hopefully 2022, a YouTube channel. We have a bunch of videos that we just shot that are kind of everything from simple to little, much more deep dive. And then check out the blog. We're going to be we put a lot of the newer articles in there, like at least once a month. We'll say, this is the new cool stuff that's out there. That's the best way to find me, or shoot me. I can't answer any medical questions. I get at least 10
Mhm.
of them a day, like I said. If it's a general question of where to find stuff, I'm glad to help people out as much as I can. Me or my assistant will kind of point them there as we can.
Absolutely. And we will link all those in the show notes to your Instagram, your website, everything. And then last question for you, Dr. Paul, we ask everyone is, how do we put the health back in healthcare?
Break it, break the system down and start over again. It's gotten to the point where it's like you said, it's just broken. I mean, like I said, I think I see the light at the end of the tunnel finally, that
Yeah.
it's people are realizing it starts from the bottom, it starts with the foundation, and build it upwards again. And it's not just on taking medications for the side effects from other medications that you happen to be taking. And again, it's the simple thing is sleep, exercise, watch the diet, and the health will follow. And then talk to your doctor, your healthcare provider for the little things you may need. But it's not something you control your healthcare. It's not the doctor anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Paulvin. Super grateful for you coming on here and educating me, educating the listeners. So thanks.
Cool. Thanks for having me on. That was fun.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. The field of longevity and anti-aging is the new hot topic in the realm of medicine and science. And we're seeing researchers find new information daily, from new biochemical pathways that our body's producing to new supplements that might target things like mitochondria and inflammation. In the next 5, 10, 15 years, we're going to see this huge boom, and we're going to learn truths that we've never explored or understood before. And so my call to action for all of you is to understand why you may want to live longer and why you definitely want to live healthier, right? How do we improve our lifespan and our health span? And understanding those motivations and incentives is critical to changing our habits. Is it because of our relationships, our kids, our spouses, our parents? Do we want to live longer for them? Do we want to live healthier for them? Is it because we are excited to see what the future holds in terms of the world? The rapid progress that it's showing, the virtual reality, the unknown that we have no idea what might be out there, but it's truly exciting to be a part of. So really sit down, understand why it is that these things matter to you, and how can we change our current habits so that we can further progress to better versions of ourselves. Now, as always, the medical disclaimer. Everything in this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of medicine, and we are not providing medical advice. No physician-patient relationship is formed, and anything discussed in this podcast does not represent the views of our employers. We recommend that you seek the guidance of your personal physician regarding any specific health-related issues. And for doctors, the story has changed. Visit financialresidency.com/locum story to see if a locum tenens assignment is right for you. It's here you'll find the unbiased answers you are after, so you can decide if locum tenens is your next chapter. All right, everyone, if you love this episode, please share it with your loved ones so that as a team, we can improve our health span and lifespan. Please rate, please review, and please subscribe so that you can keep up to date with all the Medicine Redefined episodes. And we will see you next week with another Lessons Learned. Have a great week.